Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish them, and how they market them. The Writer's Dream has a Facebook page. Please like us, and if you have any questions, please ask them on the Facebook page. We also have a YouTube channel. If you are an author and you would like to appear on The Writer's Dream, please contact me through the Facebook page. Today's guest is Shoshanna McColumn. She is a repeat guest, and she has written Fire Island, Beach Resort, and National Seashore, and her latest book, which will come out in June, is Images of Modern America, Fire Island. Welcome, Shoshanna.
Thanks for having me back, Linda.
Oh, it's great to have you back. And Shoshanna lives on Fire Island,
Yes,
which is really an adventure, isn't it, Shoshanna?
Every day.
And can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got to Fire Island, what it's like to live there, and how it got you into writing about Fire Island?
Sure. I am closing in on my 20th year on being part of Fire Island.
Do you get a trophy for that?
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I came to Fire Island sight unseen, responding to a job posting at my college alumni, and answered it. It said, looking for a curator for a historical society for the summer, free lodging. And I thought, oh, I'd like to get out of Brooklyn in the hot summer, and I love the ocean. So I put in an application. That's a story in itself. I lost my confidence. I was filling it out at the unemployment office. I was typing away at this cover letter. I said, what am I doing? And I threw it in the garbage. And I went back to the unemployment office the next Monday. It was a Friday afternoon. I never go day after day, but there it was, the same cover letter in the garbage all weekend long. And I thought it was a sign, so I mailed it in. And one thing led to another, and I got the job.
Great.
And
what was the job like?
I realize now, people have said, I've worked a lot of jobs on Fire Island, but I realize now I've always worked the same job. It's just different titles. I was supposed to curate exhibits on the history of Ocean Beach and Fire Island. And so the idea of sourcing photographs and compiling text and researching exhibits, that's what I started doing, and that's what I'm continuing to do, just in the form of books.
How did you get connected with Acadia Publishing? Because Acadia Publishing puts out these books.
Yes. Well, Arcadia, the Historical Society was just the beginning. I would graduate to other jobs in the Ocean Beach area, one of which was I started freelance writing for a friend of mine who I became friendly with, the owner of the Fire Island Tide, while working at the Historical Society. And after I had left, he said to me, I'm looking for an Ocean Beach columnist. Would you be interested in the job? And I said to Warren McDowell, Warren, I'm not a writer. And he said to me, Shoshanna, he said, I've seen your press releases. I've seen your exhibits. He said, you can do this. And as I said, I wasn't very good in the beginning, but I got better. And roughly, speed ahead 10 years, and just covering local events as they happen. You get your connections. One of them being Jared Stoddard from the Fire Island Association, who, whenever there was a Fire Island Association meeting, I'd cover it. And one day I get a call from him saying, there's this company who's looking to do a book on Fire Island. Do you have any interest? And I said, yeah.
See, opportunities certainly knock. I know when people ask me about my writing, I always say I'm not a writer. And although I have published 3 books, but it sort of is an outgrowth of your day job, if you want to call it that. It's stuff you do, you learn to do your research, because I'm sure in these 2 books you did an enormous amount of research, which we'll get to. Right. And once you start compiling research and organizing things, you're a writer.
It's a culmination of your experiences, all of them. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're on Fire Island 20 years now. What parts of your personal life has that impacted?
Well, a few years into my job, which was a summer-only job, I met my future husband, my husband John, and we'll have been married 15 years come June. And my life shifted to becoming a year-round resident of this wonderful place. And it's been
An adventure.
It's been an adventure, but it's been my life. It's
Fire Island is now your life.
yes. Yeah.
So now it's interesting to me to hear that the way you got to Fire Island was a job as a curator in a museum, compiling historical types of things. What is it about Fire Island? Because this is not the only story I've heard about people compiling Fire Island history. What is it about Fire Island itself that makes it so such a place of historical interest?
Well, I think it's a place of romantic interest. I think it's a place that people are truly inspired and they want to know more about it. And, I always say Fire Island's actually a reflection of Long Island. It's a reflection of New York. It's a microcosm. There's so much happening in such a concentrated slip of time and slip of space.
Right, a sandbar.
Yes, and that makes for a very compressed experience, sometimes very intense experiences. And so, yeah, people are curious, well, how did this come to be? And I guess a great way to start is to discuss, people always ask me how Fire Island got its name, and that's always one of the first questions. One of the more romantic theories, although I don't know how much credibility, there's some. It was before the lighthouse, there were what were called land pirates, and they'd light these signal fires to try to sway ships in the wrong direction. Now this is Long Island's maritime history that is still so much a part of us. But if you go, everyone says, well, it's these land pirates, those fires, that's how it got its name. And I would learn over the years, those fires and those land pirates, they were in Nantucket, they were in Newfoundland, they were everywhere. But if you go to any of these places now, they say, oh, we don't want to talk about that. We're embarrassed by that. But you go to Fire Island and everyone's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
us.
it's New York.
Yes, there's a definite attitude.
Yeah, there's a difference between Massachusetts and New York.
The tenacity of Fire Islanders is
Legend.
yes, and there is no shortage of material. No shortage.
Yes, in any research that I did, because my first book takes place on Fire Island, any research I did, that is what I notice most is the tenacity of the pirates, the tenacity of the freebooters who are really pirates, and the bootleggers, and actually the one of the most interesting stories for me about Fire Island is the United States Life-Saving Service, and the number of shipwrecks off Fire Island,
Yes.
and because of its oceanographic bottom and the currents and whatnot. It's just such a fascinating place.
Yeah, and again, there were life-saving stations in Florida and other places, but we possibly had the best ones on Fire Island. Because of the unusual riptides and conditions, we had some of the very best.
And all of the ships coming to New York Harbor.
Yes.
I think I think the proximity to New York is probably a big help for Fire Island as far as all that history is concerned.
And let's segue to what the modern images of America, the tenacity never went away. We are approaching the 50th anniversary of the Fire Island National Seashore enacting legislation.
And that's pretty exciting because they manage to preserve Fire Island.
Yes, there would not be a Fire Island today as we know it, had a group of residents who hunkered down and didn't let a highway come to the island. I saw that same tenacity even last summer after the hurricane, and that is the greatest strength of that island, one of the greatest strengths.
Well, let's go back to the books,
Yes.
because we will talk about Sandy also. Tell me what it's like to research a book like this, because it had to be a lot of hard work, but also fun.
Oh, they're always fun. They're always fun, and there's always a bit of drama. Part of you was like, how am I going to get this started? And then you hunker down with. Let me talk, if I may, about
Absolutely.
images of modern America, because that's important to.
Sure.
Not only is it part of it's not only is it an Arcadia book, but I was asked to be part of the launch of a new series for Arcadia.
Certainly, tell us about that.
Yeah, Modern Images of America is their first new series in 20 years. And this is going to be one of the first 20 titles in that
Excellent.
release. And when the phone rang with that opportunity, and they said of all the books and all the writers they've had that they wanted me to come back 2 years later, I was so incredibly honored.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which shows that you really are very good as an archivist and a collector of, and I know you for a few years now, and it's your people skills as well, your ability to engage with people and get them to tell their stories. So how long did it take you to collect the photographs?
Much less time than the first book, and that was out of necessity.
Okay.
With the first book, I was given over a year to get it done. And I took my time, and I was very methodical. And of course, but they told me, Shoshanna, the 50th anniversary is next summer. We want to get it on the shelves. You've got 5 months.
Oh, boy.
I was like, oh. And I found myself saying yes, and I thought I need at least another month, but I said okay. And it was a different approach than the first book. There was sort of a feeling my way around in the first book, and there was a lot of more traditional research. I went to a lot of museums for the first book, and
Right.
that was because they were vintage images. But I knew by then what the museums had and what they did not have. And I also knew 2 years later, a lot of things had happened, and I had connected with a lot of new people. I don't want to keep harping on the hurricane and going back and forth, but this book was released 6 months before,
Sandy.
to the day. 6 months later, Hurricane Sandy landed, and the island changed shape.
Yeah.
And the map inside was no longer valid. The book became, it was necessary to have a sort of a part two, but I take pride in that both books they couple together, but they also stand on their own.
Yeah, I noticed that just even looking at the makeup of this book and the photos that you have there, that there's a difference in the focus of the types of photos. Am I correct to say that?
Well, yes, among other things, all of the pictures in the first book in the traditional Images of America series are in black and white. It may be, I don't know if I'd call it cutting edge, but this is their first color series. But there's also a difference in pace and attitude. And maybe the faster deadline helped that along. It wasn't a bad thing in the end. It was a good thing, actually. When you're doing your first book, there's this part of you, at least a part of me, I was like trying to be a good student. I wanted to get an A, and I worked hard, and I wanted to please everybody.
Sure.
Well, I can say I did not want to cut corners on research and diligence. That was there was no question about that. But I think I was a little more candid. And I think there was times I said, oh, I don't give a damn. I don't, I wasn't trying to please everybody, because you know what, you can't please everybody.
Yeah, and I think what happens is once you publish your first book, it gives you a confidence.
Yeah.
It gives you a confidence that, okay, what I thought was okay. It was acceptable and it was right. And so I know at this point what is acceptable and what I should steer away from. So, and with each book that you write, or with each successful publication, whether it be a magazine article, and certainly you've had enough experience with your journalism career that you know what's okay. You have a sense.
You always have to have a sense of fairness. These books are supposed to be neutral, so you're not supposed to use them as a soapbox. And
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
But I took a few more risks with the other book. And I think maybe if you try to be a good girl, maybe it's just a little less interesting. But if you take risks,
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
So take a risk on this show and tell me what your most interesting story was, and your maybe I can combine them. The best photo, the most interesting story in compiling images of modern America.
Okay, I have a question. When you say interesting story, do you mean an interesting story within the book, or my experience
What's
in
the one
preparing
that
the
sticks
book?
in your head and you will remember when you're 80?
I remember, well, within the second month of me getting awarded the contract, my telephone line went out. And that isn't uncommon in August because there's a heavy demand on the telephone system. But Verizon decided they did not want to maintain their copper cables after Sandy. And a lot of people's phones went right away. My phone was still good. My internet was still good well into the middle of the summer. And then suddenly they weren't maintaining it anymore. And I had with my connections, I had gotten people to put out press releases to try to scope out photos. A gentleman by the name of Marshall Brown of an organization called Save the Great South Bay, he did me a huge favor. I gave him a call, and he put on and used his website to say, this young writer, well, not young anymore, this writer is putting out...
Take what you can get.
He put a nice release together, and suddenly my phone line's dead, and suddenly my internet is. It was.
I remember that.
I was frantic. The timing was awful, and my husband's very clever, and he jury-rigged his system. He